Unsure about your niche, what it is, or if you should switch it? Well, find out on today's Consulting Matters podcast. And welcome to the Consulting Matters podcast. This is the show for purpose driven consultants and coaches who are ready to own the power of what they do and position themselves for greater impact and income. I'm your host, Betsy Jordan, and I am an ex Disney consultant and successful consulting business owner turned both business mentor and brand messaging and positioning strategist. So you can find out about all the things I do to help my clients get rock solid clarity and confidence in what they do so that they can build a thriving business that they absolutely love on my website at www.betsyjordan.com. And do not forget, Jordan is with a Y. So let's talk about what we're getting into today. Today, we're going to be talking about if switching your niche is the right move for you. So, this is important whether you're just getting started and you're just struggling with landing the plane around like, okay, is this really how I want to focus my consulting or coaching business? Or if you've been at it for a while and you have clients and you're wondering like, I'm not sure if they're the ones that I want and I'm not sure who the right one is. So before we get into all of this, like let's get on the same page around what a niche actually is because I think that the word niche is one of those big words that gets thrown around a lot and it's very very misunderstood. So let me get clear on one thing. Your niche isn't about looking through your strengths or your areas of expertise and having to choose from among them, like a Sophie's choice kind of choice where you have to decide like, oh, this is my strength I really like, but this other one has to be left out in the cold. Like that's not going to work because the right business for you is the one that leverages all of you. So what your niche actually is it's an easier to digest word for really brand positioning. And brand positioning is the unique space that you own in the market and in the minds of your ideal clients. So what it does is it defines who you help and the problem that you solve, and then it connects the dots between that person and their problems and you and the unique value of your consulting or coaching. And so, really landing the plane on this is incredibly important as it's the foundation of what you need, not just to grow a business that you love and really set it up for that focus and sustainable success, but it's also what you need to stand out in the market that seems like it's getting more and more crowded every single day. So, to help us out with this, I'm so excited to bring on the show Brad Johnson. So, he is a client that we've been working with for a while, and he's going to help you answer really the pressing question around your niche, around like whether you should keep doing what you've always been doing and or stay on the path that you've been thinking about or move on to something totally different. So that is what we've been working on. So Brad has a very interesting background. I can't wait for you to hear all about it. He's a high performance coach in every aspect of the word, and he was in that very spot, where he wanted to shift his focus, but he wasn't quite sure what it was. So we had a really interesting time, like really combing through his strengths and his education and his story, and we really landed the plane pretty quickly in his expertise. But where to focus it, that was solely different. So I know you probably can relate to that whole issue and the back and forth, like, should I go this direction and should I go that direction? How do I just get clarity? So that's what Brad's going to help us out with. And so without further ado, welcome to the show, Brad.
It is wonderful to be here. Thank you for having me.
Especially like because like we've gone through a lot of different work on your brand messaging and positioning, and there was like some other things that got in the way. And it's like it's so wonderful to finally be at this place where it's like, oh my gosh, we have a story to tell. Um, but before we get into this, I would love for you to establish for the listeners around like just your background. You have a very interesting background. Like, so before we get into what it was like for you to switch your niche and try to figure out your brand positioning and all of that, like, how did you go from, like, all the education you had and, like, the neuroscience-y kinda stuff to, like, technical sales management to then starting your own product-based business to performance coaching? Like, can you just, like, give us a little bit of a backdrop of that?
Sure. So yes, I studied biochemistry. I was actually in a pre-med program in undergrad, determined that I didn't want to be a doctor and took a job in a laboratory after school. Actually, full disclosure, I took a break after school and I bartended for 6 months. And then realized, okay, maybe I better do something with this scientific degree that I have. Not that bartending isn't sort of science, right? But
That's true.
so yeah, I took a job in a laboratory because I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I realized after about 6 months that that wasn't for me. And the biotech I was working for had just launched a product that was literally going global, and so the ceiling just kind of got blown off of this small privately owned biotech, and there was a ton of opportunity. So I quickly relocated from the Boston area to San Diego, designed a remote office for myself out there in the days of that being relatively unheard of, and started getting involved more in international distribution management and supporting growth, particularly in the Asian markets. So I got to travel all over Asia, places that tourists don't go to and places that tourists go to. I don't know how many states. I've been to all 50 states, but not all for work, but a lot of domestic, a lot of speaking engagements, mainly still in tech support, and then slowly started to transition from tech support into sales. Became the Southeast regional sales manager, um, and relocated to the Southeast from California, and everything was great. And then my wife and I got this crazy idea that we would move to Quebec, where she was born, and start a company. I won't tell the whole story, but basically, her father was from Finland, and there was this fruit that was growing in Canada that was originally from Finland, and he was really passionate about it. So we said, "Well, what do we get the guy who has everything? Like, we'll do like a business plan for him on this fruit that he loves so much." And so I did the science processing side, and my wife was in marketing, and so she did the marketing, and we brought the two together, and we each read each other's proposal, or not proposal, but part, and we were like, "This actually sounds like a good idea." So next thing you know, the guy who moved to San Diego, who swore he would never live anywhere where there was winter ever again, is on his way to Quebec to start a business. I didn't speak French. It was an adventure that I was not fully prepared for at 30 years old. But our business model initially was to take agricultural byproducts and use a technology called supercritical fluid extraction to turn them into oils, and then also create powders and other things that could be used as ingredients in foods and pharmaceuticals and nutraceuticals. But we were just a little bit ahead of that kind of natural, organic, people will pay a premium kind of curve. So we said, okay, well, what do we do now? So we used our own ingredients and became a natural skincare company. We won a couple of awards. We had a clinical trial done that proved the efficacy of our 5 core products. And, next thing you know, we're talking to a national distributor. And yeah, it was quite an adventure moving from our little farm facility that we built to a 5,000 square foot manufacturing facility. And it was pretty cool. So that's
So then
kind of
how'd you get into coaching then?
so people ask me
Or
that
was it
question.
coaching or was it coaching and consulting? Was it a little bit of both, like helping companies? How'd you get into that business? How'd you go from having your business to getting into that?
Both by design and just by accident, honestly. um, People ask me that all the time, like, when did you start coaching? And if you look at kind of the coaching approach to communication, like, that's how I was selling. I was asking questions. I was building rapport, asking questions, you know, finding, and ultimately it was like, what can we do together that will benefit you? And that was my approach. So I kind of have this thing, like, I've never actually sold anything. It's just been about solutions. And so I think I've kind of had that coaching approach throughout. And then in Quebec, we did some mentoring for some other entrepreneurs up there, got involved in a few different organizations. And when we moved back to the States, what am I going to do? I said, well, I'll start a coaching business. And I was also really passionate about endurance sports. I had started doing triathlons and Ironmans after late stage cancer in my 20s. And it, those two things just kind of came together. And so I launched an endurance coaching business, or what was supposed to be an endurance coaching business, which very quickly became about 15% endurance coaching and about 85% coaching, other coaching. I don't know if it quite qualifies as life coaching, but it's like, okay, I seem to be attracting these executives who have really no business trying to do an endurance event because they already work how many hours, I have no idea. They have families at home, they have philanthropic endeavors, like all these other things. So it's like, okay, well, how are you going to train for this event and not lose performance in those other areas of your life? And along the way, the consulting was more really by word of mouth, like, hey, we heard you did this thing up in Quebec. We're starting this company. When CBD came down, I got involved in a CBD startup. Like, we have no idea how to actually make products out of this stuff. It's like, okay, well, that's something I know. So yeah, that's kind of an overview.
It's interesting, it's like, I'm hearing it again, like, we talked about this in your the initial listen to your life exercises, and I've heard some of this, but it's just hearing you go through a little bit of again, it's like there's always been this theme in your life, where it has something to do with the intersection, between, like, the science and business and, the physicality, like, that's always been, like, this theme even in everything that you were doing, even, like, when you how you framed up, like, bartending, because like, bartending out of like, out of a lot of professions, like, there's a lot of chemistry that goes into that, so I think that was interesting that you even made that connection. So tell me about, like okay, so bring me to the moment that made you decide, like, "I need to get help." Like, you booked a call with me, but what was going on in your business that made you think, like, "I need to do something different than what I'm doing right now?" And I'm not quite sure what it is, but it's time for me to make a change.
So for years, my wife had been telling me, you're getting paid as an endurance coach, but you're working as a performance coach or an executive coach. And I'll just mention that the payment structure between those two things is fairly significant. The difference, I should say. So she had been encouraging me for years to do that, um, to make the switch. Um, and it really came through a job I had. I was consulting for a company that was creating a coaching platform. And so we started to build out a product offering, like what do coaches need? And so what you do, is a huge thing that coaches need. And so I was originally searching for people to pair with that platform, but and I won't just say something, it's very intentional. I know that I read your website and I was like, this is what I need as a coach. That contract was coming to an end, and I wanted to really focus on building a new coaching brand and a new coaching identity. I've been coaching for a long time, but most folks that know of it associated it primarily with the endurance side of things.
So you're like a it seems like you're somebody who's a reinventor. Like, what was it that made you feel like, "I can't do this reinvention?" Like, you have a wife who is a marketing person and, and there was clarity at least on, like, "I wanna do something with executives." Like, so what was it that was making you feel like, I really need help through this process rather than try to figure it out on my own?"
But the first thing that pops into my head with that question is I have a really hard time narrowing things down. Right? It's like I could do this with anyone. Like everybody needs this. Uh, and so, there's a bit of just, at 49 years old, having hopefully learned a few things about myself. Um, and you mentioned my wife in there. Yeah, my wife is in marketing, and we've worked on businesses in the past. And at this stage, we know that we want to be married first, and business. Like she still helps with a lot
Yeah.
of things, but
Yeah.
just having a kind of a clear separation between the things we do in business and our marriage, and that definitely played a factor as well. But really, what I've always struggled with is really narrowing it down to, like, who is it that I am meant to work with?
Mhm.
And it's not even want to work with, meant and want go together for me, at least. It's who is it that I'm meant to work with? And what am I specifically doing for those people?
If I don't think it's the same. I think that's really powerful. Let's sit with that for just a half a second. because I think that sometimes people choose like want to is like this may seem more lucrative because you were saying that there's like a price difference where you could have just said, I'm an executive coach, and you could just kind of gone that. But it's like, I think there is a different nuance of like, it's not all the executives. There's somebody who is meant for me, and I want to figure out who that person is. I think it's different because some people might want something because it seems like it's more profitable. Like there's a lot of people who say, I want to go work in organizations versus like having a private coaching practice, like working with individuals. And it's like, well, but do you want to? Because you just, your world rises and sets on, seeing organizations be effective, or is it that you feel like you perceive it might be easier to land work or more profitable? Like that's a want. What you're talking about is deeper. You're talking about like I'm 49 years old and like, it seems like there's, like, purpose that's driving you, not just what seems profitable.
Definitely, definitely, and I've done enough coaching under whatever umbrella. You know, I had clients that I was working with as an endurance as an endurance coach, and I had clients who were a hybrid, and then I had clients who were solely executive or performance coaching. And so I had this pool to look at over the course of 10 plus years and say, like, when is it really produced like something powerful? When has it really been meaningful to them and to me? I think for purpose and serving others is, who are those that I'm meant to serve, you know? um, and I think it's having, I know a lot of coaches, excuse me. And, I think it's something that coaches in particular really struggle with, right? Because it is a competitive marketplace and it's hard to think about. I think a lot of coaches, and I was guilty of this as well, don't like the idea of like, well, excluding potential clients. Like, oh, by doing this, am I excluding potential clients? And so once I made that mindset shift, like, no, it's not excluding others. It's about really focusing on creating the most powerful outcomes for those that match with the way I operate. And that was just that changed my perspective.
I think that that's a really important part because I think there's a lot of things that you could do. So there's like a difference, like, yeah, and we're going to figure out how to package up, like, one of the next order up for bids for us to work on is like now you've gotten your brain clarity, which we're going to explain in a second for those who are listening. Um, but we are going to talk about how do we package it up into offers. Like, so that's going to be something different. But when we think about your offers, we're not going to leave any of your strengths out. And I think that that's what the idea sometimes when people think about a niche is like, oh, I should just like choose out of these things that I'm great at and then just focus on that. Like, oh, I'm good at coaching, so I can't do anything else. Like, or I just do retreats, or I just do assessments, or I just do strategy or org design or whatever that is. Rather than like when you choose the person, you could bring all of that stuff to the table. But it is a mindset shift and it's a pretty significant one. How did you get your mind to say that there's more opportunities for me if I narrow down versus if I stay broad?
I think for me, it was just, again, it was looking back over who I've worked with. Like, not that it's easy, but there's an energy when things are aligned between a coach and a client, right? And so it's like, when has that been most powerful and palpable? Um, and when has it not? Right? And so I've been guilty certainly of, oh, I can't say no to a client. And then, that client just wasn't meant to work with me. And it, turns into a struggle. And then they suck the energy out of you instead of creating this kind of abundance of energy that fuels both parties. Um, so, um, and I had a sense of who those folks were, but I could not put it into words. And it's frustrating, and some of that frustration came out in front of some of our conversations because I was like, it's there, but, like, I can't we're not getting it, and then once we got it and it clicked, and then it was just like, "Oh, this is changing," and you said something earlier about, people, right, say, "Oh, well," or you mentioned, like, including all of my strengths, not saying, like, "Oh, just bringing particular strengths in," and that was an experience that I had through working together, us working together. It's like, okay, no, once you figure out what the niche is, that's the narrowing. Then it's like those are the people you can bring your whole self to. And I just give goosebumps even saying that, because it's like, okay, I don't have to compromise, right? We think it's a compromise to like this is the specific person, so to speak, or a group or whatever it is, like, somehow compromising by not including other people, but no, that's not a compromise because that allows you to be your whole self.
And it's interesting because I do this all day long every day, and I still struggle sometimes where it's like, I think I could do something else that's a little bit off, and anytime I've tried to do that, like, when I was in Denver. Moved to Denver a couple of years ago, and I rented an office with a bunch of therapists, and I'm like, "Oh, well, maybe I'll just, like, offer my branding to the therapists because there's a whole bunch of them. Like, they all would need it." And when I started talking to them, like, I have to, like, totally adapt all of my processes specifically to them, and they don't have anything to do with the consultants and coaches that I work with. Like, it's a very different person who's a mid-career person versus these therapists, and it's like, this is taking me way too much time, and it's not as profitable or interesting, but then if I could stay on track with consultants and coaches, like you're in my Impact and Income Accelerator group, like, that's a new offering that I was able to add, and I love that, like, I don't wanna do everything. Like, I love the one-on-one work, but there's a power in the group, but
Mm,
I was able to create something different because I have everybody has stuff in common, so it, opens up and I have tons of other ideas that I wanna do, with groups, but if everybody was different, I couldn't do it, and I think there is something about, like, the alignment, the flow, like, common problems, and then you can create community around other people who have common problems, and there is something that's, like, really exciting about that. But you
mhm,
did mention the process, so let's get into, like, our work together because, I will say, I warn people when we get started, and I don't know if I explicitly warned you, is, like, there's gonna be a part of the process where it's gonna feel like a little bit of, like, a wrestling match, and I'm really gonna have to wrestle the clarity out of you, and you're gonna hate me for a little bit, but we're gonna work on it on the other end. Um, I don't know if I warned you about it, but that is seems to be part of the process, kinda like a personal maybe in your coaching when you're helping people with endurance, like, do you wind up in that point where somebody says they wanna do something and you kinda have to, like, push them a little bit to get to that outcome?
mm.
Is there a comparison to your endurance coaching is what I'm kinda wondering.
Yeah, I think that there's a comparison to a lot of things that I've done with that. Um, and yes, you were very upfront and about, I'll say, like, it's gonna be a struggle, right, at times. And honestly, that's one of the reasons why I chose to work with you. And I
Is
was
because I
like,
warned you or or because I warned you up front, I didn't pretend it was gonna be like unicorns and rainbows and
the latter, I didn't experience it as a warning, I experienced it as honesty. And so for me, it's like that's a big, like, do I think this person's being completely open and honest with me, or are they trying to sell me something?
Right.
And then I'm
Oh,
gonna
that's
find
good.
out it's different on the other side, right? So so
Like,
yeah.
I've had some clients who are like, "Oh, you land work with empathy, and why are you not, being empathetic with me right now?" I'm like, "I am being empathetic, but in a different way." Like, I
Mhm,
know that real you is inside of you, and I'm just like, I'm gonna keep digging at it until we find it, and it's like, there it is. Like,
mhm,
in our work together, it was really easy to define your expertise. And even though you have all of these different experiences, like, we hit a label pretty quickly. I
mhm.
think it was something about, like, human performance or high performance. Could you, like, remind me of the label of your expertise?
So the original label was, human performance coach.
But your expertise was human performance. Like,
Yes.
we landed that quickly, but with your ideal client, it was a challenge. Like, we tried on many,
Mhm,
many different things. Like,
mhm.
what was it about the ideal client in particular, like, outside of, like, the niching down and all the fears and all of that stuff, like, why was it even though you had the mindset going in, you knew you wanted it, what was it about figuring this out that was just so difficult? Like, and how did and what was the breakthrough? Like, there was a breakthrough moment, like, everything changed for you. Like, your countenance changed on our sessions, like, we could giddy up and go, like, it was totally
Mhm.
different. Like, what was it? What was challenging about it and what gave you the breakthrough?
So, what was challenging about it was that for me, the ideal client doesn't exist in one industry or one subset
Mm,
of industries. And that's, I kept thinking, okay, I've got to, is it doctors? Well, it's not really doctors. Is it, this health wellness profession? Well, not really. But the breakthrough came when we came up with, and I don't think we came up with it. It was kind of like it just revealed itself to us, so to speak, that really what we're looking at is science-driven entrepreneurs.
yeah.
And that can transcend not every industry. So it was still a focusing as far as like where these folks work, but it was that that's the connection with the individual for me,
Mhm.
right? And that actually covered all the industries that we had been trying to figure out, which one of these is it? And it's like, well, no, it's those and not others, but then it's this individual within those industries. And
Which is so interesting because it's so congruent with your past. Like, that
mm,
it's like it was almost like it was right there in front of us,
mhm, yeah,
and it's so congruent with your past. Like, it's almost like, a lot of times I feel like when people are wrestling with the ideal client, like, 9 times out of 10, if we can't find it, it's probably a younger version of you of some kind. Like, you spent your career in that skating the line between science and business. And so it's like, it was there. Like, and then we saw that and everything changed. And then clarifying the problem that you solved became really clear as well. Can you
mhm.
talk about that a little bit?
So, if I may be so bold, I think we're still refining this, and I think this is going to really get further refined in our next kind of phase of work, where we look at the offers and we really, hone in on the language around the offers. Um, if I was going to sum up the problem that I solve concisely, I, I think I would add to the ICP that science driven entrepreneurs who maybe don't have. Uh, the same business training as some other entrepreneurs might have, right? So they're
Uh-huh.
science, they've started a business, the business has had a level of success, and now it's at a point where it needs more, right? And the problem that we're solving for really is that the owner themselves, who's been a high performer, they've been a peak performer most of their lives, probably across multiple domains, is now the bottleneck.
Mm,
So we need to take them from being a peak performer to a peak leader,
yeah.
right? And I also use the term, I've tried it out a couple of times. We're really taking you from an owner operator to a strategic leader, right?
That's good. We'll have to remember that, write that down for future copy. Write that down, but, I think that a lot of people who are listening, who are consultants and coaches would say, "Yeah, that's me." Like, I work with tech leaders, and
Mhm,
they've gotten to a certain point in their career, and they've skated on their technical competence, but now they need, like, these supposed soft skills. Like, I hate how leadership is considered soft skills because I think they're the hard skills. Like, the vision setting and the leaders in the political savvy, like, those are hard skills, but anyway, in the industry, they're soft skills. But I think that that's what a lot of people think is like, "Oh, they've gotten here," and, like, that's sort of like that what got you here won't get you there. Like, your technical skills built the business to this level, but it's
mhm,
not gonna get you all the way home. Like, you need
mhm,
a different skill set.
mhm, absolutely.
So, so, like, when you think about, like, your clients, so, like, all right, so we have the problem is they are a science-based. They're science, and we also added in that they're science leaders, they're analytical and competitive. Did
Mhm,
we use the word competitive, or there
mhm,
was something else that related to the high performance? Did we say
mhm,
competitive
mhm, yep.
or driven? I think we said competitive.
I believe so. Yeah. I don't have it
Okay,
right in
so
front of me.
there's scientific, analytical, competitive. These
Mhm,
are these so they're these founders of these companies, and now they're needing to move into this leadership role. Have you gotten to the clarity on, like, okay, so if they had these skills, so if they stepped into that leadership role, what they wanna create for their business? Is it simply scaling their business to the next level? what was like, what's their ambitions for their business on the other side?
So my experience in doing this so far is that there's an ambitious goal for the business typically, but there's also an ambitious goal for them in their life. And we're not necessarily coaching around the ambitious goal in their life, but the business needs to grow, right? Perhaps it's even plateaued and it needs to refine its growth curve. Um, so setting an ambitious growth goal is definitely part of what folks seem to want to do, but they also want to get their life back.
Yeah.
Right? So, those 2 things don't seem to necessarily align when you just look at it on sort of on a spreadsheet. It's like, "Well, how am I gonna do this?" And, geez, like, I wanna assistant coach my son's basketball rec league or whatever it might be, you know? So it really seems to be both of those things. And it's funny because we think of competition really more in the former, like, oh, I want to, like the competition, the competitive nature comes out in the growth of the business, like wanting the business to be the best. But then there's also sort of a competitiveness on this other side of like, okay, yeah, but I also want to be the best or better in other areas of my life. And so that's been really really interesting. So I may be getting ahead of our conversation, but talk about ROI. It's got to be it's for some folks. It's just about time.
Yeah. I think what you're speaking to is, like, where the beauty of the ideal client. So, one of the things that most people, like, spend all of their time worrying about is, like, "What do I do? How I'm different?" And, like, unless you really get clarity on your ideal client, what they want, like, then you can't figure out how you position yourself, and I think what you're speaking to is where your endurance coaching and your high performance is that you could help optimize their performance where they can achieve those, like, premier athletic level performance. Like, they could hit elite performance in their business because you've maximized their capacity
Mhm,
to achieve that transition without, like, working harder. Like, that's part of, like, that's the gap that you can fill, and that's where you're different is in comparison. So let's say they went to another business coach who did not have that background. Like, they might say, "All right, well, where are you today? What's your target? Where's your current? What are the steps? How are we gonna grow your business? What's in your way?" Let's do a gap analysis and root cause analysis, and let's get the business going. Let's identify what your leadership competencies are. Where are you today? How do you want to get there? I think where you're going to come in that's different is, yeah, you could do all that regular stuff, but you could also look at, like, how do I maximize your ability to perform at peak levels? Like, really maximize your capacity for decision
mhm,
making, but maximize your capacity for strategic thinking, like maximize your capacity so you could actually still achieve this and you could achieve all those other things you want in your life.
mhm. Yeah, and I think that's really important. Uh, it's an important differentiator, but I think it's also when we talk about the ICP or the ideal client. That's what they're looking for as well as a difference in their coaching. Like they want, like it didn't come up in my kind of overview, but I also have a master's in human physiology, and my concentration was in human performance, so human performance psychology. So they it appeals to them that I have a coaching process that is founded in science.
Uh-huh.
They're science driven, and they want a program that has science intertwined into it, not just my methods. And so
Right.
that's only possible if I'm working with the ideal client who wants that.
And somebody who's, like, also competitive. Like, I think that just the science alone, like, the way I have a vision in my head of, like, let's say somebody is, like, comparing your leader to, like a washing machine, where, like, they got certain amount of energy in order to do that, and then, like, you teach them how to become, like, a high efficiency washing machine where it's like you can, like, wash more clothes in less time and, but it's still the same amount of, like, it's still the same basic activity, like, you can optimize the capacity. And I think that's where the competitive side, like, that's what athletes do is, like, they can, like, they know how to manage their energy in a different way, so you could help them from that standpoint, but then your approaches to how you help them grow as a leader is rooted in something that they can trust because they don't trust. I imagine your clients don't just trust like, whatever. They're not going to be woo kind of people like, what's your North Star? Let's describe your intuition, let's unlock your authentic self like that's not the language that would speak to them.
Mm, no.
So, okay, so here's what's really fun. So we hit your breakthrough, but this is where I could not wait to have this conversation with you about this. So we had a session, I think it was like on a Tuesday or Monday, and then you're like, "Cool, I have so much clarity. I'm going to play out my what I do script and I'm going to go and use it in a networking opportunity that you had." And it was like game changing. It was like, "Oh my gosh." Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So I was at breakfast and I was talking to someone who I've known for a while. We've known each other. Um, and, uh, and he had brought me in to speak, and it had gone really well. And he's like, well, he's like, tell me he's like, tell me more about what you do so I can figure out, basically a way to kind of repay me. And so I went into my really unrefined at that point, little spiel, so to speak. Like I work with science driven entrepreneurs um, who are trapped as, owner operators. They're trapped as operators and they've been the bottleneck and they need to transform into strategic leaders in order to allow the business to grow and succeed. And on top of that, there's like a complexity threshold that they've reached, not just in their business, but it's impacting the rest of their lives and so on and so forth. And, here's how I go about, addressing those things. And I had no idea that I was talking to my ideal client until I stopped talking and he said, Brad, I don't know what this is going to look like, but you just described me. You just described my situation and you just described what I need. Like,
Oh.
where do we go from here? And, uh, and it was, it's just like, wow, talk about proof of concept right off the bat. And, and so, very, very shortly after that, he said, so like, does this look like, you send me a proposal or like what, what does this look like? And I was so kind of caught by surprise. I kind of didn't really know what to say. I said, well, we need to sit down and we need to have a discovery conversation, which at the time I didn't know was actually the
Phew.
right thing to
I
say.
was like, "You're the Impact Income Accelerator, you should know it's a discovery
Well,
meeting."
so
I was
this,
hoping I wasn't gonna have to talk to you about that.
but I think this happened like right before we started the uh, the Impact and Income Accelerator program. Like, I think it was like
Mhm.
that morning or something. And I think we had a meeting and then you're like, would you just share this like right as soon as we get started today? And I was like, sure. So I was very relieved in our group that you're like, here's the steps. And I was like, phew, I didn't just try and like give him a price or something right off the bat. But so yeah, so we've had our discovery meeting and where he's eager to get started. So yeah.
Well, perfect, because we could use you as a guinea pig for the proposal, process that we're doing next week, so yay. Uh, what I really love about this is, sometimes, like, people, well, not all the time, like, as people are like, "I just need to get the clarity and confidence, in what I do." I'm like, "Okay, but what's the ROI?" And one of the KPIs that I go after, in the brand messaging work is like one is like just saving you from the hours of spin. Like I would say
Hmm.
conservatively, my clients before they work with me, they're spending like 20 hours a week in spin, and I could like get it down to 5. I don't know
Hmm.
if you can verify if you think I got it down to like 5 or less, but it's like not spin, it's just like strategic time. But then the other one is like get better results from the networking you're already doing. And I think that that's where you immediately got results because you were on point around the ideal client. You didn't talk about yet about like all the things that you do. You don't even have your offers framed up yet, but you were able to make that connection by describing it. And I think that that's the power because a lot of times people go into networking events and it's like, I'm an organization development consultant and I ignite leadership and organizational potential. If you would have said something like that, I don't know if it would have resonated, but you painted the picture of the ideal client. And just because you did that so well, and I think that's what you said I did well on my website is I painted the picture of like the current, like where they're at.
Hmm.
That's the game changer.
Mhm.
That's where the results come.
Yep.
But there's a better
Absolutely.
part of the story too. You didn't even talk about the better part of what he also said about the 50 other
Oh,
people that he
yeah.
wants to introduce.
I forgot about that. Not really, but in this conversation, and he said, you know, he's like, "There's 50 other me's in this industry that I work in that, you know, could potentially connect you with." So, um, you know, a little bit of pressure to get that good experience. I mean, and that's you know, that's another thing that I've struggled with or that I struggled with. You mentioned the transition and the turning point earlier was my business is not the skincare business, but, you know, my coaching and my consulting had primarily been word of mouth, and it had been adequate, right? But then looking to make this shift, this, um, change of focus in the coaching, um, I knew that word of mouth wasn't gonna get me where I needed to go, right? I still believe that the best salesman for what I do is someone who's experienced it and talks to someone else. Um, but, uh, but, you know, this need to just really be clear and be able to clearly express through my outlets, um, and also in conversations what it is that I do and who I do it for. You know, it's a game changer. It was so much different. Sorry if I'm babbling a little bit here, but that conversation was just so powerful because it was so different. Because normally when people would ask me, you know, what do you do? I would have started with the what, right? But I
Mhm.
think when you're talking about your ideal client, there's a that's where the purpose comes in. Like
Yes.
why I work with these particular people because there's a purpose to us working together. And that was a game changer, right? Because coaches, a lot of us do a lot of the same things, right? So if you're talking about the what, it's like, okay, well, you know, I have another client. He always jokes around. He's like, I went to another networking event and I couldn't turn around without spilling my coffee on a coach, you know? It's like coaches are everywhere. And it's like, okay, well, how do we differentiate ourselves? I really think it's through the really understanding the who and the why, um, and then the what
I
secondary.
I think if I don't if I might, can I push back on a couple things you said? Just,
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm not the expert, but
um no, I feel like what you're saying is the ideal client is the game changer, and that is where your purpose is. I think when you say that the referral people are the best potential clients, I don't experience it that way because referral people don't always know exactly what it is that you do. Like my best clients come from like people like you. I didn't nobody knew you, but it's like you probably found me from my content on my website. And those people are like looking for a solution. Sometimes
Mhm,
referrals, like they're not looking for a solution. So you almost like have to paint the picture, like you
mhm,
have to do that. Like, but if you had something to give to that guy, that if you like on your website, you had like a blog post or something that spoke to him and he could like forward it, like maybe that could kind of like start
mm,
driving more
mm.
the relationship. Like everybody's not always ready who people who refer you to,
Yes,
like they're
that's
not
true.
always like at the end of that process. And I think that's where there's a myth is like, oh, the
Mhm,
referral. But then it's like, oh, they get ghosted. It's like, well, that's not because they don't have a burning need.
mm,
The best clients are the ones who are actually looking for you.
mhm,
And the more you can do to make yourself easily found is those are the best clients because 'cause they're actually coming to that awareness like you did. If somebody referred me to you a year ago, it wouldn't have happened. It was because you were ready, you were looking for something.
mm.
So I just wanna clarify that part.
Yeah.
Um, there was something else I wanted to hit. What was the other things? There was something else that was important I wanted to what was the last part of what you said? Because it was important, but I
Maybe it was, I was talking about how I would have started by saying what I do.
no, that part is accurate.
Okay.
Um, that part is accurate. The coaches all do the same thing. Okay. So, no, we don't. Like, we all don't have the same expertise. So, as
Mhm,
an OD consultant, like, I might have like expertise in assessment. I am a branding person, so I have expertise in that particular
mhm,
area. Like, I have methodology, we have coaching, but that's not where your expertise is. We didn't label it as I only have this. That's like a delivery mechanism of your expertise. It's not your expertise. Your expertise is how to build science. You help know how to transform science based leaders to into like these science-based founders into these strategic leaders, you know how to do that. That's a different value proposition. That's a different skill set. And I think that's where coaches, we like get too focused on like our methodology or like the idea of coaching, like I ask questions or I'm a consultant, I give advice, whatever it is that we do.
Yeah.
But we all have different kinds of expertise. Like if you go around our, in our group, like everybody has coaching as an ability, as a delivery
Mhm.
mechanism, but everybody has a different type of expertise. And so why would I bring just it's not just that you're passionate about these particular leaders, it's that you have the relevant expertise that these particular leaders need. You know how to build science-based
Mhm.
businesses.
Mhm.
You know their science. You understand the science
Mhm.
behind what they do.
That
That's a different kind of expertise, and that's also part of what the differentiation is. It's the whole package of your ideal client is the starting point and the context for your help, and then you insert you into the picture. Like, to me, like, my if I just had generic branding expertise, would it be the same as me having 30 years in the consulting or coaching industry? It's like, I know how to do branding for consultants and coaches. Out of my 30 years in the industry, 15 years of running my own business. So just like I don't wanna diminish I guess I wanted to bring that up because, like, you have a really powerful expertise that they need that and it's more than your ability to ask good questions and listen
Mhm.
and help them set goals and, like, it's so much more than that.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
that okay? Did I push back on that one?
Absolutely, and I agree completely. I think I was thinking in terms of, like, Simon Sinek's, like, golden circle, like, the what, right? There's lots of companies that produce frying pans, right? But then you get into, like, well, how do we produce a frying pan? Right? Like, we start to differentiate. So, I agree completely. I think I was referring to, like, I think all coaches coach, right? Right, but then you get to how you do it and what your actual expertise is that you're bringing to the coaching, that's where we start to differentiate, so I agree. Yep.
And especially around the ideal client, because you could start to see, like, let's say, like on ICF, they might suggest, like, you put on your website, like the difference between consulting or coaching or why hire a coach or something like that. Like, let's say you were going to have a blog post on that, which I would not recommend because it's like too us centric, not client centric. But let's say you wanted to flip it and you wanted to make that kind of blog post that's more specific to your audience. You would say, why do science based founders need help transforming into a strategic leader or why they can't do it on their own or 5 steps to go from instead of just having that generic. So like now the ideal client, like now the content, you can start thinking 1,000 pieces of content. Like why is it I can grow a science career, but I can't like lead my business or 5 sneaky reasons why your business might be plateaued. And then you can put a parentheses, you know, your P your MD might be the problem, or something like that. You could start to see the articles start to play themselves out.
Mhm.
So now you have this clarity. Now you're excited. Tell us what's next, because I'm excited to bring you onto the show where we're mid process. Like
Mhm.
everything's not buttoned up, so that it to be clear that there is value just in the clarity, but you need more than what it that you need more than the clarity to build the business that you said you wanted, where you wanna attract more than word of mouth, and you wanna be able to reshape the market's understanding of you. So what else are you working on to align your business and your brand?
Well, so the next thing that we'll be working on is what's on my mind, which is framing the offers, right? And so I have in my head, I have 2 off right? There's coaching, which I think if you go to a lot of coaches' websites, they'll be like, "Well, you have to contact me for, like, the fully customized" right thing, and it really doesn't say anything. So I'm curious to see what we come up with as like the framing of the coaching offer, right? And then I also in partnership with a guy I've been working with for a few years, and through his company, it's called Evolve. We also have what we call the Aligned Leader program that we're developing, which touches on a lot of the things that I already mentioned. That's been really cool to kind of see the alignment between what I do on the coaching side and this thing that we're building together. Um, so yeah, it's how do we frame those? How do we put this out there? Um, website needs to be updated. Everything needs to be updated. Um, and then for me, it's also just an exciting time to go out and start. I'm not afraid to start having some conversations now, right? And
Yeah.
it's just it's such a game changer. And now when people ask me what I do, and my mind immediately goes to, well, it's what I do, but it's more importantly, it's who I do this with, right? So
Uh-huh.
if they are going to refer someone to me, they're like, okay, well, oh, this is the person you described. Okay, well, that's really where we ought to start. So I don't know if that fully answers your question, but that's
That's a perfect answer. And I like how you clarified it's like, yeah, I know I need to build all this other stuff, but I can get traction now,
mhm.
because I'm really clear. I could tell the story of my ideal client and the transformation that they get from working with me, and the rest will manifest. And I think that by you having these conversations, like the opportunities will start, coming your way automatically anyway, which will also help you as you are working on the all the other pieces. The one like, if you're gonna work on content at any point in time, like, as you're networking, you just start paying attention, like, well, what are the questions people ask you? Like, start, like, writing it down. What are people saying that they're resonating with? And that's where you know you have, like, really good copy. So, how do people get a hold of you now? Like, so if there's people who know science-based leaders of a company or science-based entrepreneurs, people who have a company, let me see if I got this right, because I wanna know if I'm testing myself, like, science-based entrepreneurs who have developed their company to a certain point because of their technical and scientific expertise, but then they kinda hit a wall, and the results have hit a wall, and they need to become strategic leaders so that they can stop being the bottleneck of their opportunities. If people know that person or that person is that person, or they just wanna learn more about you, connect with you about, your experience, how do they find you right now while your website's under construction?
The best way would be through LinkedIn, right?
I imagine there's a lot of Brad Johnsons on LinkedIn.
There
I mean, I'll
are.
put it in the show notes, but is
Okay.
there is there do you have a hack in yours?
Well, Brad Johnson, Charleston, South Carolina, and then executive performance coach. That might be. It's a slightly different wording on that. Yeah.
I'll put it in the show notes for
Okay.
sure.
Great.
Uh, yeah, this is where the benefit of Betsy Jordan with a Y is because it's easy to find, but there is some other Betsy Jordan with an A that people are probably finding. All right. So, as we wrap up, like, I got a couple like final wrap up questions. Like, for people who are struggling with their niche, and choosing their ideal clients, like, what tips would you give them?
Don't wait until you're ready to. And I don't know if that's clear. Like I thought I had to get myself to a certain point before I reached out to get professional help, so to speak. So that would be my first tip is, two heads are better than one. Um,
Uh-huh.
and find someone who will challenge you and push back because that's where you'll achieve clarity. That would be my top tip. Um, and then yeah, take some time to reflect. Right, some of the answers are in your fast. Right, some of it's like right there. At least a starting point. So yeah, those would be from my experience.
Awesome. Is there anything else you want to tell me or tell my audience about just this whole process of, pivoting your niche or growing your own consulting or coaching business or, even working with me or anything, and I'm just not asking the right question?
I don't think so. I think it kind of goes with what I was just saying. I think, and I was victim of this as well. It's like, oh, when should I do this? When will I be ready? And create the readiness.
Yes.
Um, you know, I just it's okay to take the leap before you're ready.
Well, that's a great note. That's perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you for sharing your story. It's Um, from my perspective, because there's, like, things that happen in the middle that, like, had to stop for a couple weeks, and it's like, "Okay, how's this gonna do it?" And what I love about you, and maybe this is because of your endurance, background, is, like, you just stick do itness, on the whole thing. Is like, I don't I like, I talk about it as a wrestling match because, like, I do know that the clarity will come on the other side, and I watched you wrestle even if it was hard, like, you just kept showing up to the mat, and it's like, "I just know this is gonna come on the other end." So, I think that that's just part of the process is that, and especially when you're dealing with, like, your true like, if you wanna do, like, the business that's meant for you, like, that's part of, like, your vulnerability or authenticity is not naturally gonna just show itself up, like, I think Parker Palmer says, like, the soul is shy and you just have to, like, wait for it, but sometimes you have to, like you have to the wrestling is I'm wrestling past, like, my false self, like, all the stuff that I don't really want to get to the goal of what I really do want. It's like all of that stuff, and I just really appreciate you just hung in there like you just live your brand, and you lived in your process, so it's been really fun
Well,
working
thank
with
you.
you, so thank you for that.
Yeah. It's been a fun process.
And for those of you who wanna join me on the wrestling match of your clarity, you can find out more about my services at www.betsejordan.com/services, or better yet, you can book a call with me if you go to my website, you could hit, like, the big pink button, and it'll take you right to my calendar, or if you wanna go to the page, that says schedule, you can go betsejordan.com/schedule, whichever one, but let's chat, we will come up with a custom solution for you. And I think that is it for today. Thank you all for listening, and I will see you all next time.